All right, so we'll start in about another 30 seconds or so. Okay, so hi, good afternoon, good evening, and good morning to people who are listening to us from the Eastern Coast, I guess. My name is Kushbakht Fatima Jamal, and I welcome you all to the penultimate webinar for this year's Global Evaluation Initiatives Local Week. The event has been put together by Center for Economic Research in Pakistan and CLARE PCA. For Pakistan-specific programs, we've had a few sessions related to crisis management, flood response. We navigated through some themes on climate resilience, witness sessions on women in the labor markets, use of geospatial data, education programs, and using evidence-driven data to launch nutrition products. Today in this session, at least for me, I think we're going to focus on perhaps the most significant of the sectors in the Pakistan economy. I say that with the caveat that I, along with the panelists I have here, are all agriculture, if nothing else. But I can still not discount the fact that agriculture is probably the shiniest glimmer of hope in the economic crisis that we face these days. For those of you who are relatively new to the sector, agriculture contributes about 22% to the country's GDP, employs about 40% of the total labor force, provides raw materials to our manufacturing industry, and together with agro-based products contributes about 80% of our very precious export earnings. It's also providing food security to the world's fifth largest population. However, we have witnessed decline in the last couple of decades, with an average growth rate of about 2.3% per annum, and that's one of the lowest in the region compared to all our neighbors and countries in South Asia. We're probably slightly above Maldives only. Our average farm yields remain at least 1.5 to 2 times lower than those of the progressive farmers within the country, and about 3 to 5 times lower than the global averages. So before we start, I'd like to introduce you to our panelists. First, we have Dr. Anjum Ali Buttar. Dr. Buttar is the Director General Extension and Adaptive Research at the Punjab Agriculture Department, where he has been leading extension activities for the past 15 years. During his role, he has launched multiple initiatives to incorporate ICT tools, initiatives on tunnel farming, biological control agents, mechanization, soil health improvement. You name the thing, Dr. Buttar has worked on that. Previously, he has also held positions at Pakistan Agriculture Research Council as well as University of Islamabad. He has an MSc and PhD in agronomy and also an MBA, and has published widely on agriculture and policy issues. Dr. Buttar, welcome. Our second panelist today is Mr. Adil Shafkat, who's the Country Director for Precision Development and SERP At PXT, Adil has led digital advisory services for over 1.3 million smallholder farmers in Punjab in collaboration with the Agri Department. He's a public policy and public financial management expert and an academic at Lahore School. His research interests include public financial management, digital advisory services, as well as capacity building. He holds a master's from Warwick and a BSc in Econ from LUMS. Adil, thank you for joining us. Right, so today we're going to talk about some of the existing bottlenecks to enhance agricultural productivity in Pakistan. What are some of the key challenges that we face, and how potentially we could go about addressing them in the near and longer term future. I've broadly classified the challenges into three big categories: production inefficiencies, market inefficiencies, and policy or regulatory inefficiencies. Before we start, a quick note to the participants. We encourage you to be interactive throughout the session. Use the hand raising or the question and answer session or question and answer feature to take you through the outline. We'll spend the first 25 or so minutes discussing the challenges with about 4 to 5 minutes per person per question, and followed by another discussion on the role of data and evaluation in agricultural activities. And I will then dedicate the last 10 minutes or so on an open question and answers from the audience. Right, so jumping on straight away to the production-related inefficiencies. Dr. Butcher, how do you think input quality, particularly that related to seeds, fertilizers, pesticides, and also the soil health quality itself, has contributed to the decline in our productivity in the recent past? Over to you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. It's really an honor for me to talk to this forum, because the agriculture is a backbone of our economy, and you will say that the linchpin to drive almost all the sectors in Pakistan, specifically the industrial sector, because all of the industry drives its raw material from the agriculture. Since independence, Pakistan agriculture is basically based on the top alluvial soils and the river waters. But with the passage of time, our productivity and production has increased, no doubt. But our challenges were also increased. We have increased our population to 250 million, I think. We have the new estimates. And earlier we have only 30 million. Means it's about 7-8 times increase since our independence. Agriculture has also grown, but the growth production was not in all the sectors. That's why when we say that we have a green revolution, and through the green revolution, we have introduced the irrigation, fertilizers, and the pesticides in the system with the seeds. Actually, this was not only the seed revolution, seed was coupled with other 3 inputs. It was basically management of the wheat crop as well. We have seen that after the Green Revolution, we have experienced many other revolutions, but these revolutions remain unnoticed. If you see the productivity and production of the potatoes, the adoption of the potato crop, the corn revolution, the rice revolution, the fruits revolution, and the introduction of the new crops. But because of these very small number of the farmers we have, over 90% farmers are living in the areas where they're planting land less than 12.5 acres. This is the subsistence farm model. The cooperative system has not worked well. That's why everybody has to make his own decision. And that is decision was basically major weakness in the production. If you see big farmers around the world, they are managing the farms. at their own. There are the corporate sector is working there, or the commune system is working, or the cooperative is working. Such type of models are not so eminent in our areas. We have experience of contract farming. The contract cluster farming is emerging higher, but because of the very small number of the farmers, we are facing the problems of poor qualities. We are using fertilizer, N, P, and K, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potash. This is the recommended fertilizer. But our use of NP is against the recommended dose of 1.5 to 2 into 1 is at the moment is 3.6 into 1. And this is basically lopsiding the overuse of nitrogen in Punjab province, specifically in Pakistan as well. The use of phosphorus and use of potash is basically a major impediment in the production. Farmers are overdosing the nitrogen because of very cheap and we can say the subsidized, and the other fertilizers are so common. We are facing the problem of quality in fertilizers as well, specifically in the area. In phosphate fertilizers, when the phosphorus use was common in wheat crop, we are having such problems. And the application, and we say the 4R technology, when to apply, how much to apply, where to apply, and which crop to apply. This is the right time and right place technology is not so common. We are having the simpler type of crops, or whether wheat, cotton system, wheat rice system, wheat sugarcane system. We have diversification level is not significant. That's why the use of the exhaustive crops has deteriorated the soil quality. These are, I have already said, these are alluvial soils made up from the river soils, the riverine soils, have inbuilt problem of salinity. Because of the monocultures, the soil fertility is depleting, the soil salinity is increasing, and this is also a major challenge, like the other issues of the climate change and the water situation. We are facing this issue as well in our business. And this is the soil deterioration. And because of the use of the exhaustive cropping system, because the bird is using exhaustive versus restorative, they are using the crops which are restoring energy to the soil. But all the crops, 5 major crops, wheat, rice, sugarcane, corn, and cotton, all are the exhaustive crops. We have no soybean culture, we have no fodder type of culture, we have no leguminous crop in the major system. That is one of the issue. The second one, you have rightly mentioned, the use of pesticides. Pesticide quality is no doubt a problem because we have allowed the generic import, the import from the countries of origin in a branded form. But the more important to my extent is the pest scouting. Because we have very small farmers and their education level is not high. They are delaying the use of pesticides. And when they are delaying the use of pesticides because of their less education, this pesticide roglio has created more problems. The second important one is the use of pesticide applicators. When I am starting from the backward, the identification of the pest, the correct analysis of the pest population, then hit the weak point of that pest, then use of pesticide applicators, and then come to the quality. If you see that the BT revolution in Punjab province has improved the yield in cotton. But if you see, the BT has nothing to do with the production. This was simply the protein integration in the system to protect the crop from the pest. Then how the yield has been improved? Because the flower loss, the boll loss from the pest was reduced. And that's why this is increasing a challenge. And now the farmers are generally of the view that the pesticide quality is not good. I do agree that we have the pesticide quality problems, no doubt. But the other problems are also as important as the pesticide quality that must be taken into account. The second important issue is the pesticide pricing. We're saying the price of the pesticides, and we are basically the importing country and importing 100% pesticide from the cheap markets. This has also created the problem for the selection of the farmers to quality pesticides. Another important input in Pakistan is the mechanization, the machines. Our society is, our agriculture is partially mechanized. We are using the seedbed machines, or we have the tractors. We are using tilling the soils, but from the tilling or seeding to the harvesting, we have not significant machinery because we are small farmers. We are having the tractorization in agriculture rather than mechanization. More number of tractors and less number of primary implements, and then the secondary implements and the tertiary implements. Service provider concept is emerging in Pakistan, but that is not supported. If you see the 500,000 tractors in Punjab, there are 23,000 villages, and every village has 40 tractors on average. But these 40 tractors are not having implements according to the requirement of the crops and the soils. The service point is not educated. Even the tractor operator is not educated. I usually say that the tractor operation or movement of the tractor or tractor driving is a difficult job than the car driving. Because for tractor driving, he has to apply different type of implements every time and to work in a different type of soil. But he need no training, etc. Simply having the key and to load on the tractor. Even he don't know what is the actually PSI in the tires. And the most important is the whole input issue, the seed. Yeah. Seed is basically the most and one of the most important weak links in our system. 80% of the farmers are using their homegrown seeds. Seed system has no father and mother because seed is not traveling according to the seed technology or seed genetics. First, growing of seed and growing of crops are altogether different business. Seed technology and crop technology is different. We are selecting the crop seed from the crops, whereas the seed has a different type of input use. Seed requires generation. The early generation is the pre-nuclear seed, then the pre-basic, the basic, and the certified. We are using these systems, but we are not adopting that technologies. We have no protection for the importers. That's why the paradigm shift is required through the regulations. And then the seed stewardship. Because when you see the pyrethroid seeds and the three other terminologies we are using, that's why the farmers are more relying on their own seeds. That's why if I'm basically thinking about the imported seed, even imported seeds have such type of issues. That's why complete traceability, here the digital agriculture will involve. If you have a complete tracking system from the source of origin to the end side, not only in seeds, but in fertilizers, in seeds, and in pesticides, port of entry to the end point. If I have a traceable record through that digital agriculture, and we are using it, we are trying because we have changed the fertilizer distribution system, and we have the portal where we are tracking the complete value chain of fertilizers, just because of the problem of pricing. And we are trying in pesticide and seeds, and we are expecting that we will be seeing a good MIS system in seeds very soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Butcher. Thank you for explaining most of these issues in that amount of detail. I agree, in addition to input quality, access, timely use, method of application are all equally important, if not more. Adi, moving on, if you could perhaps just build on what Dr. Butcher said in terms of farmers adopting certain practices. I know at PXD you have been researching on the adoption of high impact practices, and often try to figure out what exactly are the barriers for farmers to that keep farmers from adopting them. Care to elaborate a little bit on that?
Thank you, Krishwek, and thank you, Dr. Saab, for a very enlightening response. I don't know how much more I can possibly add to that. But when it comes to behavior change, and I think that what Dr. Butcher was talking about, it's very evident that certain practices definitely need to be changed or need to evolve over time if we are going to make the best use of the resources that we already have access to. So yes, absolutely, we can have a dream of improving the quality of seeds and R&D, etc. But there is also a major gap even for existing available inputs and the type of practices that farmers adopt. And the real challenge here, again, as Dr. Butcher pointed out, is the fact that 80% of our farmers are smallholders with 12.5 acres or less, which basically means we have a lot of fragmented landholding. This obviously poses challenges for mechanization, which is typically designed for large-scale holding, and hence cooperative systems can work theoretically, but in practice, all over South Asia, we've seen that they've never really been sustainably taken up. So then the challenge becomes, how do we get individual smallholder farmers to make the right decisions at the right time, which are optimized for the specific context and challenges that they face, right? So at PXD, and I believe in other fora as well, the highest probability of success that we have kind of bet on is digital extension, right? As much as possible to try and customize the advisory that is given to farmers, and to try to make sure that the timing of delivery is in such a way that it is very easy or actionable for the farmer to follow a practice at the right time. They don't have to keep it in mind over a long period of time or forget about it. So in behavioral economics, the principle we use is called nudging, right? Essentially, you just nudge the other party that, oh, it's time to prepare your land, right, for sowing. It's time to apply fertilizer. It's time to apply pesticide. Now, what are the challenges in creating such a system? Obviously, you need a lot of information. You need a lot of data. You need to understand where the farmer is located. You need to know the weather patterns. You need to know the type of crop that they're growing, what their sowing dates were. Again, each of these factors will actually determine where on the timeline the farmer is on any given week. And the advice that you're sending them, since you want it to be actionable, has to follow the specific individual timeline of the farmer. Now, at a village level, this may be more or less the same or clustered, but across a tehsil, you might notice that this can be significantly variable depending on a number of factors. Also, again, the weather can play a big role. If you have rains in one village and not the other, this can change the timings of various applications. So the more information you can collate, and the better you can customize the advisory, the better the chances of getting farmers to change their behavior. Now, Dr. Buttigieg also emphasized, and I do agree with this, but I do have a little bit of pushback here about farmers not being educated. I agree that they're not educated. However, I do not think that that is as big a problem as we sometimes think of, right? Because if you speak to any uneducated person, they are very well educated about their own life and their own context. They are the best experts for that, right? But at the same time, obviously, there are certain modern practices which they simply may not be aware of, or optimal practices which they may not be aware of. So for me, it's not, the gap is not that they are educated or not. The gap is in those agronomic practices that they simply have had no exposure to. You know, in Punjab and all over Pakistan, we continue to farm, and especially smallholders continue to follow practices which, you know, their Bap Dadas or their ancestors have been doing, and it's been passed down from generation to generation. But a lot of things have changed. The type of seeds have changed, the type of practices and best practices have evolved, right? So what we need is an extension service that is very responsive to those changes, but also that has a sufficient capability of transmitting that information in a timely fashion down to each individual farmer. And that's where, again, digital extension can come in. Punjab government, mashallah, has one of the largest field forces. However, you still have over 5 million farmers and something like 3,000 extension workers. It is humanly impossible for them to cover everything, every farmer. And usually at the village level, there will be political economy factors that will usually result in the extension agent being co-opted by the local elite, or having a small network where they are sharing information, but other farmers may be systematically excluded. So one thing we need to do, just to summarize really quickly, we need to have a lot of granular and detailed and verified data on the farmers, what they're growing, where they're growing it, how big the land is, what seeds they're using, etc. And secondly, we need to have a mechanism for digital advisory distribution, which can give those farmers nudges at the right time so that they can change their behavior to optimize for current best practices.
Thanks, Adil. I'm going to hold you to that thought, but maybe after discussing the next couple of challenges, I'm going to bring you back to the use of data, especially the satellite data that some of the newer players in the market are now utilizing. Dr. Buttigieg, back to you. We've discussed extensively, or somewhat extensively, the first part of the value chain, which is the input supply or the input access, but more of the marketing side of the inefficiencies, especially whatever happens post-harvest. So storage, transport, selling. There are large inefficiencies with large number of intermediaries between the final consumer as well as the farmer. How do you think, or what do you think is the most important challenge in that part of the value chain? Is storage something that we need to address first? Is transport the other? Is marketing reforming the entire marketing system in the province, or largely the country? What do we need to focus on, and why? Please.
Thank you. Ma'am, we have started the discussion with the small number of farmers issue. And we're saying that predominantly we have small farmers. Then we have to accept that we have small surpluses as well. When we have small surpluses, then the intermediary must enter into the business if we have no concept of conglomeration. If the farmers are not united at one place to make small surpluses into big surplus, and that big surplus can transport through their own system to the market, then we must have such problem that every farmer who has 5 bags or 6 bags beyond his requirement has to go to the market and then to sell it. He will have another arti, a middleman, who is basically the jointing or linking the small farmers to the big markets. And this is also a big credit house. They are not simply the middlemen, they are lending money with the huge margins, 30%, 40%. And that is also reflecting on the cost of inputs. Farmer has to got the input, he is taking input from that middleman or Aarti, and Aarti has his own system. The important issue with that Aarti, or the strength of that Aarti, is basically he is lending money without any much documentation. He's just making the phone call and getting the funds. If the other subsystems, the government systems, are mainly working through filling of forms and verifications and land collaterals and etc., and then huge margins. That's why, despite the fact that this year the government of Pakistan has raised the total credit limit in Pakistan from 1,400 billion rupees to 1,800 billion rupees, the production loans will not be correctly utilized by the farm. No doubt the number will be achieved. No doubt the production loan will be dispersed, but the actual farmer will not be appreciated through this loan in a better way. The dairies, the other businesses, in the name of the small farmers will get that. This is the issue. And that is basically creating the market inefficiency. And that market inefficiency is reflecting on the productivity. Yes, I agree that our Market Act needs immediate revision. And that's why Punjab has introduced the PAMRA. If you see PAMRA, Punjab Agriculture Marketing Regulatory Authority. PAMRA is functioning for the last 5 years. And he has replaced the erstwhile Mandi Act 1935. We are expecting a change, but the change will start when we will see that change at the farmers' field. When they are united, harvesting in the correct time, less post-harvest losses, packing on the farm, processing, and then reducing the wastage, and then have the brands or the specific niche to enter into market by themselves. The profit minting by the middlemen when passing to the farmers, that will increase the productivity, and you see the diversification. This is actually the things are moving, but moving very slowly. If you see, we have the export of over $100 million in fruits and vegetables. And we are hitting all the big markets. If you see the USA, the Japan, we are sending our products there and we are complying all the international compliances, whether that is ISPM, that is quarantine, but we have a very small window for that. We require the education, but I will say the adult education to the farmers to go local at least with a joint activity, and then from local to national, and then national to international. We must have the focus that when we're saying that the international world is asking for healthy food, what is ISPM, what is quarantine, what is sanitary and phytosanitary measures. Every country has the right to feed its population a healthy food. And they are targeting the maximum residue levels of pesticide rice. They are targeting the overuse of pesticides on the fruits and vegetables. and they are having a use of more fertilizers and the arsenic in the soils and many international problems. And why not? That is from the own population. First, we see that our own population has to get food without sewage water growth. On the growth of the fruits and vegetables and the crops, on the quality water. And then when we have that and we are packaging that, and this things in the last 10 years will change. You have seen that from the old carton of wood, it has been changed to gatta in fruits. You have seen the buckets. You have seen the net packets. You have seen the processed food in the markets. And things are moving, but moving slowly. When these things are moving, then the farmers, if we are developing on one product, one village base, and they are having small clusters of one crop each, according to the strength, they will then hit the market for their incomes. Internationally, we can't compare with the USA because they are producer organizations. And the producer organizations running their industries. But in case of us, we simply want the jointing and sharing of resources at village level to produce a big crop size and then transfer it on their own negotiable prices. Otherwise, the small farmers like issue will always have the market inefficiencies, and then efficiencies always reflect on the poor productivity. Thank you.
I think, thank you, Dr. Butcher. I think the first part of what you talked about, especially the RT and the farmer dynamics, is something extremely close to our heart. We recently conducted a very detailed qualitative study and found the interest rates to be anywhere from 40 to over 100%, depending on the location and the type of negotiation that a certain farmer can have. So agreed on that, as well as the second part. So just taking that forward to you, Adil, aggregating at the village level and then trying to negotiate at their own terms. I mean, you could either do that through forming some sort of cooperatives, or maybe entering into some sort of contract farming with potential buyers. What do you think are some of maybe one or two key challenges that prevent either of these models to be implemented at a larger scale? I mean, there are a few examples of contract farming here and there, especially in the case of potato and maybe sugar, but not for the intensive crops that we have. So any ideas on that? Dave, can you hear us? Fatma, can you confirm if Adil has lost internet connection, or am I suffering from some internet?
Adil will be rejoining shortly.
Okay. I'll give him a couple of minutes. Sure. In the meantime, Dr. Butcher, there is one very interesting question for you from the audience. Maybe you could take that while Adil rejoins. Muhammad Bukhari says the private sector, he feels that the private sector is much better placed than the public sector to provide digital extension services. Would you consider making data that the government already has publicly available, for example, information on soil or land boundaries? Generally, that's the practice that's followed globally. But in Pakistan, there is generally government is not very open to sharing some of this information. Comments on that, and then we'll go back to Adil.
Thank you, ma'am. This is true that we have a great repository of the farmers' data. We have 4 million farmers' data with us, and we are integrating this data with the other departments. And after completely shifting the data we will have around 8 million farmers from Punjab, and we are working on the integration. And soon we will have that data, because the data available with the irrigation department, with the food department, the livestock department, and many other departments are dealing directly with the farmers. We're all synergizing it, integrating it. But this is a repository, and we are exploring the ways wherein we can share that data along with the boundaries and with the soil data, because we have over 2 million samples of quality data of soil with us, along with our field force. But having said that, one cannot say that the government sector is not behaving or is working not at par. We have to be at least studied before making such statement, because we are almost available on all the segments of the digital media. We are using the satellites. We are having all social media communications. We have at the moment the call center, and this is also informed through this webinar that in this month or the earlier the next month, we are opening a digital wall. This will be a 64 feet big wall. We are developing a control and command center and a completely transformed call center, where we will be interacting with the farmers, and then we are preparing the quick response teams. And in that new concept, we are revising the privatization of the extension project, because this year our extension 2.0 project will be having the last year, and that project activities will be merged into the new project, and the new team will take over, and that team will be working with the private sector. That's why this was myself who has opened that platform and created the digital platform and invited all the private sector major players, whether that was Bakhabar Kisan, Farmdar, or Rickard, or Agri Growtech, and many names. We have invited all and talked to them, and likewise we are also opening to all the private sector players in the transfer technologies. And likewise, we are very close to working with the Adil Saab, because he is one of the mentors who is basically behind the WhatsApp messaging and correctness of the techniques. And we are working here. At the moment, we have MOU with the CABI. We are trying to work with the BCI, and we are almost open to everything. But we have sometimes certain issues working in the private in the government sector, because the government sector is a regulatory business as well. We are regulator in the agriculture inputs. That's why we usually work very cautiously, because we are promoting the ideas. The private sector is promoting the products. And that's why these small difference, and on the joint side, we are very ready. And in the project, we see that in next 2-3 months, we will be sharing all these resources with the approval of the government of the Punjab. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Perhaps something to think about in the future is also maybe come up, because data collection, or the government at least, comes at a huge cost. Maybe if we do become open to the private sector, some sort of cost sharing would enable the government to also be a lot more open to sharing their data sets. But that's a topic of discussion for another time. Adil, thanks for joining back. I'll also like to couple the previous question on contract and cooperative farming with the next question, so that we're running out of time. On the regulatory side, in your work with PhD and with the Agri department, what do you think is maybe the top 2 or 3 things that the regulators, be it the Agri department or others, that need to focus on to really expedite the process of transformation of the sector? What is it that you've continued to face as a problem, and how is it that you suggest things could improve?
Right. Thank you, and apologies for my internet. So it's no small matter talking about the regulatory environment, and I think that that could be several webinars worth of discussion unto itself. Of course, there is significant challenges, and I think one of the main issues that it's not just specific to the agriculture department, but to all our government departments is this policy that has been going on since the British era of rotating the leadership roles, right? And you have a secretary coming in and leaving after just when they become familiar with the operations of a department, they're moved on to another department. And hence there is a huge learning curve that's always taking place. And at the same time, there's also very little continuity in some cases. Obviously, the P&D department is supposed to kind of have that continuity angle covered, but in practice, and what I've experienced in working over 15 years with the government, is that this unless you have the highest level buy-in for a particular initiative, those initiatives tend to rot on the vine. And that high level buy-in you can get after working for years or months with some individual leaders, but when they are moved on, you get set back to square one. So for me, that is one of the key structural issues with the way that we run the bureaucracy in the government in Pakistan. And it's hopelessly outdated, frankly. And I think Dr. Nadeemul Haq has a lot to say about this as well over at PIDE. This has been one of his pet peeves for a very long time. And I think that that is definitely a challenge. Secondly, of course, when we talk about transformation, we are again talking about behavior change, but we're talking about it at the government level. And there is always, and there's a vast amount of literature on this from all over the world about how change, different people and individuals and actors can be very resistant to change just because, one can be very comfortable with things as they are, and any change can be perceived as an existential threat. So one thing to take into account whenever you're working with the government, be it from the research world, the NGO sector, or the private sector, is the same incentives that drive your sector are not the ones that are going to be driving the public sector. So you have to identify the right levers, the right incentives for the people that you're collaborating with in the government. And you have to make sure that you have incentive alignment between what you're proposing and what the government and the different actors at each of those kind of sectors are. Their incentives need to be aligned. Otherwise, you'll be working at cross purposes and not really make a lot of progress. Now, that's my 2 cents on this. But as I said, this is a huge discussion and those challenges. And of course, I have seen, by the way, let me just give due credit to Dr. Butler and the team at the Agriculture Department. I've seen their commitment to reform. I've seen the openness with us, at least for many years now, that they have been very generous with their time, with their knowledge, with their data as well, where we had some permissions, etc. So that is certainly a nod towards progressiveness. And I think that over time, there has been significant changes. But as Dr. Bhutta himself pointed out, I think it's the rate of those changes. The rate at which the challenges we face have been increasing is so rapid, whereas our rate of response to it, even though it is positive, is nowhere near matching the rate at which these challenges are emerging. And these are global trends and headwinds, obviously not everything unique to Pakistan, but our response to these challenges is conditioned by the unique circumstances we see in Pakistan. So I must commend the department for all that work that they've done. However, I do think that for all of us, we need to continue to step it up and not be satisfied with what we've achieved, and continue to push for this to be done in a more quick and faster fashion. And I think that engaging with the private sector is absolutely the next great idea and the next step, which may also help accelerate this. I just hope that these policies are continuously supported by the leadership tier, and the political uncertainties in our country do not cloud this vision of transformation. So on the contract farming thing, let me just very quickly say, I think that the main issue there is the fact that you have what we call an institutional lag, right, in economics, where there is a certain inertia to how things have been done in the past. So those artis that you mentioned, Khushbak, that have such exorbitant rates of interest from anywhere from 40 to 100%. We also know that on average, farmers have been working with those same artis for 7 to 10 years, right? There is a relationship there. Those artis aren't like me or you outsiders that are coming in. Those artis are usually embedded within their villages. They're working with their own communities. And hence, obviously, the system that has evolved, since they are the ones that finance and overcome various market frictions for these smallholder farmers, they have the ability to gear the procurement system to their interest, right? Basically, this idea that whoever has the money, whoever has the funding is going to be the one that decides where the benefits are going to accrue. And unless you have a much more direct system of marketing benefiting the actual grower, the incentive for growers to improve yields, for them to grow, become more efficient, become more modernized, are non-existent. Because as of now, if you train them, they change their behavior, they adopt new practices, all the benefits will then accrue to the middleman. So why would I, as a smallholder farmer, make that effort and make that investment? It has to be a much more direct connection. And obviously, this is a huge challenge. I don't know if there's an answer that I can give you right now about what to do about this, but this is something that we need to definitely study a lot more, and perhaps have a lot of these new agri-techs that are coming up that can present a novel opportunity for us to break from tradition. And those are the kind of paradigm shifting moments in history that can really alter your trajectory. So hopefully we can capitalize on this opportunity in this moment in time.
Thank you, Adil, for that detailed answer. I agree, we can go on and on about it for maybe the next few hours, and we'll still not be close to finishing it. Dr. Gujjar, I'll throw my last question to you, and then we'll be open to question and answers again. So I'll join two questions that I had initially. How do you think you and the team within the government has used data and evidence in the past to set priorities? Especially in your context, how have you been using evaluation or research methodologies in all things related to extension work in particular? So maybe very quickly talk about some of the recent initiatives that you've taken.
In the extension department, if you see in the last 5 to 6 years, my challenge was to improve the efficiency and the visibility of the extension agents. And that's why if you see that we have been working with the CABI to introduce the concept of plant clinics. And the plant clinics, we are conducting at the moment 600 plant clinics, where we are having the diagnostics, the data management, and advisory service at one place. And we have a proper camping, and that camping make us more visible. The second is the mobility of the staff. If you see, the agriculture extension is the only organization in the rural areas whose agriculture officer is having a 4-wheel vehicle. We have at the moment 15% allocation for the lady officers, and that's why we are having a complete fleet of vehicles for the agriculture officers, for the assistant directors and deputy directors, and that has improved the efficiency. And the government and the national and international agencies have seized that mobility and communication strength of the extension when we are facing the problem of locust. Because we have the communication logistic support very quick. And I'm sitting in Multan now, and we are basically reviewing the cotton crop. If you see, the government of Punjab has repatriated all the employees working in different assignments of the extension to go for cotton crop. And now we are very, very visible in villages as well, because our extension agents are working in different subjects. In digitalization, we have been trying to increase the reach through all social media platforms. We are there with the support of PAD at every critical juncture, specifically in the cotton, in rainfall, in hailstorms. in droughts, in less use of agricultural inputs, quality products. In all the important junctions, we are having using the robocalls, using SMS, WhatsApp. We have the WhatsApp group in every union council, and more than 3,000 union councils we have at the moment. And go and see that we are having one message traveling from Lahore is passing to the farmers within an hour. If you are visiting the cotton areas, you have seen the media vans. We have installed the projectors in the vans. We have Bolan vehicles. 90 projector-led vans are roaming around, and we are now having the quality movies showing to the farmers. And this week we have decided to go after 8 p.m. so that we have more visibility in all the villages. We are having a call center. We are trying to communicate with the farmers, and we are now again graduating with the complete control and command center, having a force of the IT professionals, the technocrats, to help the quick response teams. We are introducing the concept of Zari Nambardar, appreciating the good farmer in every village. We are trying to improve the high value agriculture by use of the consultants. We have tried to increase the number of the extension agents through the service providers, and you have heard about the privatization extensions also. And we are trying to again attempt this concept in some of the most productive tehsils. And these are basically, and the satellite imageries, and then artificial intelligence, and then remote sensing, and then many more. If you see the step toward the digital agriculture, we are completely savvy of that situation. Now, because I'm here for the last 15 years. Firstly, when we were shifting from the fax to the email, it has taken 2 years to me, because my officers were unable to even see the computer. Now my whole communication through the web-based system. We are using the Google Mails and website loaded portals for the information. And again, we are improving every extension agent. The field systems, around 2,300, have the tablets. They have day in and day out. We have a very small mobile application. We call it as AgriSmart. And this month, we are launching 3 mega mobile applications. One application will be Zari Khidmatgar. Zari Khidmatgar will have all the information the client is requiring. We are launching a mobile application for completely surveillance of our own staff through geofencing techniques. And then we will have complete backup model of the technocrats. Despite all these things, we are completely open to the international organizations. That's why a very close network with the FAO in the digital platform. 2 digital platforms we are developing in Sargodha and Raimyar Khan with the weather stations and the high-tech equipments. A digital data developed in Pakpatan by Mr. Amar Bhandara is closely working with us. And we are trying to increase its strength. And these are small issues because our challenges are very huge. We are having over 31 million acres land, having the soil health problems. The climate change is now dictating agriculture. We have irrigation problems. We have overpumping problems. We have the soil productivity and crop productivity problems. and even the farmers' number are increasing very fast because of a principle of hereditary transfers. And that issue is basically creating the problem of, as Mr. Deal said, that our farmers are still adopting the technologies having their forefathers. And these are basically challenges. That's why we are trying to convince the government to open their windows for the private sector, to use their same slogans, same logos, joint platforms, so that our visibility increase with the conjunctive efforts. Only one organization cannot do everything. That's why we are trying to convince, and I'm basically very much open to all these things, but I'm a man in uniform, and one person is in uniform. He has to work within the government rules and regulations. And when the government will allow me, I will be more than open. If you see my interventions, I have been working in the Tehsil adoption program for the last 10 years. And this Tehsil adoption program is dedicatedly for the private sector. This year as well, if you see the cotton areas, we have distributed 40 tehsils to the private sector input providers, because these are basically joint cohesions. And we are expecting that this window will be open soon, where we not only we are sharing the information we have, but the reciprocating and getting the information and the expertise from the other side, like Adil and many other experts said. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Butter. I'm very much aware of the time. We're at the top of the hour. There is a feedback poll for the audience at the end of the session. So I would encourage all of you to take that once we finish it off. I'm still going to take the last 5 minutes to answer the questions that I can read on the poll. Shabir is asking, is water pollution of industrial waste in sewerage contamination in river water also a challenge to productivity besides other inputs, including fertilizers, pesticides, and farmer management practices themselves? Either of you are open to take that question, but I'd encourage you to take it.
I agree to it, and trying to work on the water after treatment. And there are many concepts like bioirradiation techniques and some of other chemical techniques as well to clean that water. But my very strong resolve is to utilize that water, because we are 67% population living in rural areas, 33 in urban areas, and after some time we will be 50-50. This huge water creating from the urban areas, if not utilized for agriculture purpose, will have a problem in the longer terms. We have to separate that industrial water and the domestic water, and then to treat it, then to apply it. The industrial wastage may have the trees, may have the bamboos, may have many other crops which are not directly consumed by the human beings. We must have a very strong policy on it. And we are trying to advocate it, and I very strongly endorse the opinion of my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Butter. Someone has asked, maybe Adil, this is a slightly broader question, but can you briefly touch upon agriculture logistics? What progress, if any, has been made on that in the last few years? Thanks.
Ma'am, if you see the supply chain system we have, the concept of reefer containers has been emerging in our markets. The reefer containers are being used to transfer at least the mango, the citrus, and other perishable fruits, but not as space as has been requested or required. We have to, because of the energy issues, because of the cost issues. And we have to have a low cost quality products. And this will be possible with the productivity enhancement. And then when we have the productivity increase with the better genetic manipulations, then we have more surpluses, and then we have more reefer containers. And we wish that we have more diversified areas, and then we will have more reefer containers.
I'll just add to the point that Dr. Butter made, who obviously understands the issue much better than I do. But as an economist, I think it's important to understand that, these ideas are already there. We've seen the rate of change, and that continues to be the challenge, right? So if we're talking about the need for mass adoption and transformation, or fundamental transformation, it again boils down to making sure that the right incentives are there and that the benefit of these adoptions is going to accrue to the right actors rather than those people that tend to extract rents, right? So there is a regulatory part to this, and there is also a economic incentives part to this. And those technologies exist. We know what needs to be done, but the scale at which it becomes efficient and the scale at which you kind of reach a tipping point, we're nowhere near achieving that. And the answer to that is, again, is derived from some of the other broader and more structural issues that we've already discussed. So if we solve some of those challenges, then the logistics are also another piece of that puzzle that will slot right in. And I think that involving the private sector and making more opportunities for connecting, different platforms for buyers and sellers, or giving alternative paths beyond the middlemen or the local aarti is definitely one of the keys to achieving transformation in the logistics space.
Right. Thanks, Adil. I will stop taking questions now and we'll wrap up. On that note, I think one of the most important things that we've touched upon a little bit vaguely throughout is, be it incentive design or be it design of a new policy or regulation, the importance of using previous evidence, if at all, from certain smaller pilots or other research activities that organizations like PXT or other smaller ag-tech players that are emerging now have been gathering and presenting on various fora. If we could maybe perhaps come up with a way to essentially aggregate some or a lot of that evidence and then convert that into certain policy recommendations for people like Dr. Butter to then take them up and translate them into policy recommendations. That could certainly be one potential way forward in driving change at the macro level. We'll stop the session now. Fatma, are we still is the poll done already? Sorry, I'm still not clear on what exactly I was supposed to do. Okay, great. So just requesting the audience to take this poll before we end the session. Thank you everyone for your time. Thank you, Dr. Butter. Thank you, Adil, for joining us. And thank you to all the participants and people who are viewing